Hello, hello. Welcome to day 3. How are you? How are you doing? I hope you've had a good day. So I was just sitting here. I was sitting here for a few minutes actually, and it's like my brain went into freeze mode, and I suddenly convinced myself that I had nothing to share and I had nothing to say whatsoever. And it just took hold of me for a few moments. It's so silly because I've done so many live streams, but just because it's this kind of experiment I'm doing of every day, the mind came in and try to just take over and sabotage it. Anyway, here I am. I pressed live anyway. And I was genuinely thinking, what should I talk about? And then I thought, I'm just going to share with you something like a reminder that I received today, and hopefully that it will help you as well. That basically it's a timeline reminder, and for those of you who know what that means, this is just simply a reminder. For those of you who don't know, I'll explain just kind of quickly what I mean by that. And this reminder that came in today, just from going on a walk this morning with Michael, we were just, hey Shah, hello, you made it. You made it to day 3. Yes, you did catch me. I never know when I'm going to go live, so nice to have you here. And feel free, if you're watching the replay as well, to just continue commenting. I've loved seeing all your comments. I appreciate that. I love it. I love checking back in and connecting with you. So I was walking through the forest with Michael this morning. We just went for a walk, and we just had one of those mornings. It was so lovely. It was just it was a beautiful kind of light, and the weather. We're just kind of just about going into autumn. Like tomorrow, I think we officially start. So it was a lovely, beautiful kind of morning. And anyway, so we were talking about. I mean, we talked about loads of expansive topics. That's what we do. But suddenly, Michael was saying something. We got into this conversation, and then I said, "Oh, it reminds me of one of the books that I want to write, because I've got all these different like I've just launched my first book, Above and Beyond, but I've got so many ideas really for fiction, but very expansive, like activating fiction, like really like exciting stories. I've got so many stories inside of me. And from our conversation, it just reminded me, oh yeah, it reminded me of this great story. I'd forgotten all about it. And so I was just telling Michael about like the story, and he was like, wow, that's incredible. That is a really great story. And anyway, and he said to me, make sure you write it down and don't forget. So he's a writer, and he's always writing books. So he literally, as soon as he gets an idea, he types it out and catches it. And and I agree with that. Like I'm just kind of catching the little like nugget so you don't forget. And as I was saying it, I suddenly went into some of the plot, and it was like it just sort of came through me. And then I found myself saying, it was already written that way. And then I stopped and I realized, oh, yes, in the same way as Above and Beyond, the books that I just put out this summer, it was like the book that I wrote it was obviously about my life experience, that one, but it was the way I wrote it. It was like a channeled, and the way, like, I didn't sit at my keyboard. This will make sense about timelines in a minute, bear with me. I didn't sit at the keyboard typing out this book from my head and kind of trying to make it happen. I knew kind of the essence of the book. Obviously, it's my life experience. But what I did is I kind of just allowed the process. It was like channeling it through, and it was just kind of trickling through, and I was just kind of typing it out, and obviously editing later, but it was just the body of it was typed out. And I know that was a channeled book from my higher self. I've already had confirmation of that from my guides, and I understand my higher self and how that works. So as I was speaking about this new idea, as I said, I found myself just saying this phrase, oh, it was already written in that way. And I had to stop, and I laughed, and I thought, yes, reminder. And this is where the timeline reminder comes in, that it's already been written. This is something that's already been created and written, exactly, literally in my books here, right? Exactly like my Above and Beyond. It had already been written. It had already been created on another timeline. And I know that sounds super strange if you've never heard that before. And I know a lot of you that tune into my messages you're familiar, you know about timelines, you've heard them. But just in case any of you are thinking, what the hell are you talking about? Timelines, the way to understand it is to get out of this linear way. And the way that we've been taught is that our life and all of our lifetimes and everything that happens in history is past, present, future. And the way that we're taught down here on the earth plane is that it's everything that happened before is in the past, that's gone, we're in the present now, and we're going in the future. And it's funny because as I'm saying it, I'm aware that it even sounds contradictory to what I was saying yesterday. This is the way that universal teachings sometimes are. It can sound like a contradiction, but it's so expansive, it isn't a contradiction. So bear with me. So if you kind of release the idea and understand, and really more and more of us are understanding this concept now that everything happens all at once. It's a big concept. If you overthink this concept, you will start going into overwhelm or confusion or doubt. But if you kind of, the way they always say is like, hold it lightly. But if you understand that everything's happening all at once, the way that we talk about past, present, future, just it makes sense because we have to have some kind of structure down here. It's the way the world works. But when we understand that everything happens all at once, we have lots of different timelines. Yeah, sure, 4D, 5D, that's more of a frequency. I'll get into that in a second, actually, but that's more of the frequency, like this, what station are we tuned into, right, on any given timeline. But what I'm talking about here is like the timeline. So imagine that you're here, you here, listening to this message, you've got all of these versions of you, past, present, future, all different realities. We're so multi-dimensional. This is going to come in more and more and more into our mainstream. Just watch over the next decade. This idea of being multi-dimensional. I'm talking about it now. Years to come, it's going to be so basic. We're all going to have this very basic knowledge, right? So we're on these timelines, and timelines, everything's existing all at once. So the way that I understand it, and the way that I've been learning more and more about this through my guides, through my own experience, is that when we get the desire, or we want to create something, or we want to change something, or we want to have something in our lives that we don't have, this, and I'm talking deep, deep heart, soul desire, not just I want 10 swimming pools because that's cool. I'm talking about deep, deep desire in whatever area, no matter how crazy or over the top it feels or not. When you have a desire, it's coming from the fact that your higher self, the highest version of you, has already created it. It's already been created on some other timeline, even though that might be hard for some of you to understand. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, but I'm talking in this way because I'm aware that people who tune into me, there are just so many different levels of awareness, and we're all on different paths, and that's okay. So take this as a lesson, take this as a reminder, whatever you need. So the main thing, I think the most powerful, amazing thing to start to realize or to remember, is that we are multidimensional. We have all these timelines. So when we have a desire, so I'm going to use my book as an example, right? When I had this desire to write this book was already written by me in another timeline. So I'm imagining like another version of me has already written this book. She's gone ahead. Imagine a thread from her to me. I'm getting the desire. I want to write a book. I want to write a book. I'm receiving that transmission through, and that's what the desire is. It's soul-based, it's deep. That's for me, right? That's the kind of thing I want to do. Apply this in your own life. Whatever your desire is, if you want a more expansive relationship, you want to live somewhere else, you want to work in a different way, you want to create your own business, you want to create an empire, you want to impact the world, you want to have a child, you want to have a great community. There are so many different ways that we get to create an impact here. But the main takeaway is to remember that you're getting the desire because you've already created it. So another way of seeing it is what we're really doing is when we're very in tune with ourselves and we start to release all the baggage really that clouds that. And when we're very in tune with ourselves, we can start getting clarity around what do we want? What's actually calling us? It's not just what do we desire, it's what is calling us. And then we're learning that we're not actually creating it from scratch, even though it might feel like that. We are pulling it in from the quantum field, from the other timeline, from a higher timeline. We're pulling it in into the physical. So that's what we're doing, and I just think that is not known enough. Like it is in many circles I'm in, it's like basic knowledge, but in the mainstream, it is not known nearly enough, and I want to start changing that. So, is your higher self then giving you that desire? Yes. Yes, your highest, because your higher self, which we've spoken about, right, when you were in my group before as well, we've had those conversations. The higher self is I'll talk about this actually, the difference between your soul and your higher self, because your soul is you as a soul, you've dropped into the human form. So you, in essence, you're a soul. Your soul's had lots of lives, which are all kind of happening simultaneously, but that might be for another conversation. But let's just call it past lives because it's easier to understand. So your soul is an accumulation of every experience you've ever had, right? So your soul incarnates into this form and it will continue even after this life. Your higher self is the higher consciousness aspect of you that's very connected in with this particular life. So you, with your name, as the personality that you are in your physical form in this life, you have a higher consciousness version of that. So yes, your desires come from, and I'm talking about more not the superficial, or I'm just desiring it because it's trendy. I'm talking about in the middle of the night, through the cracks, through the quietness, when you're thinking about something and then it kind of just comes into you, that desire that's deep. You want more, you want something specific. That's your higher self. Yes, because your higher self is guiding you. So this is why I do a lot of work with myself and anyone that's in a container with me or a program or anything. Higher self will always come into it because it's your higher self is your guide, and it's incredible, the potential. Many people, they live the human life and then they get to the end of the life. We feel this, right? There's a book, what's top 5 regrets of the dying, or something like that. And there's this, there's these typical things that we often feel as humans towards the end of our life that we wish we didn't do. So a lot of people, a lot of humans do end their lifetimes with regrets, with I wished I had have lived my potential. We never hear anyone on their deathbeds saying, "Oh, I wished I'd have played it more safe. I wished I'd have thought about everybody's feelings ahead of my own, and I wished I'd have had less adventures. I wished I'd have taken less risks." Unless you're an extreme, like maybe I shouldn't have taken that many risks, but that's a different thing. But we hardly hear this, and so most of us, we don't have the courage, right, to step into our potential. And our higher self is the part of us. When you start tapping into it, it transforms your life magically. I really feel like since I've tapped into my higher self, maybe for the last year and a half, 2 years, maybe I forget now. Maybe let's say the last couple of years, I've really tapped into my higher self, and started, particularly in the last year, really practiced communicating, and every day, like making a practice, going, okay, how do I move down my highest timeline today? I don't always do it. I don't always get it right. I don't always follow the guidance. Sometimes I get guidance, I ignore it. But I try and practice, and I try and step into, okay, if I was being my higher self, I was being her right now, that version of me who's strong and together and already has created whatever it is. Well, what would be her view right now? What would she think about this? And you'll find that when you tap into your higher self, it's never pushy, it's never overwhelming, it's always steady, and it will leave you feeling strong. So this is where it sort of comes into the timeline, right? The timeline stuff. So it's you've already created it. And the reason I love that too is because it reminded me today. I was like, oh yeah, when I had this book idea, I thought, because part of me thought, oh, that's quite an expansive. Hi, Jan. Hello, Jan. Nice to have you here. It's quite an expansive topic, this book, and I thought, oh, it's going to be like, God, it's going to be hard to write. It's fiction, but expansive. And then I realized, no, I've already created it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to make space to pull it in, channel it through, allow it to come through, right? So if we switch from, I have to make it happen, I have to make it happen, how am I going to build this? How am I going to create? How am I going to change? How am I going to transform? And we start to shift into, it's already created. I've already created the result, the thing, whatever it is. How do I allow myself to step into it? So now when I come to whenever the time is right for me to sit and write this particular story, I'm just going to step into it and go, I'm going to allow the space. I'm not feeling like quite yet. It's not calling me like right now, but it's there. I've marked it down and I've got the note down there to come back to it. So that's how we can start to shift. So I really wanted to share that with you because that came in real strong for me today because it was like a slip of the tongue. And I said, oh, I had written it that way and it just popped out. And I reminded myself, yeah, you've already created this and many other things. So when you get the desire for whatever it is that you're wanting, if you just breathe and relax into the knowledge, because some of these things are big, right? And they scare us. If you breathe and relax into the knowledge, you've already created it somewhere in the universe on another timeline. You are multidimensional. You are multidimensional. It might be some of you get this right now, what I'm saying. Some of you very, very familiar and comfortable with this. Some of you might feel a little resistant to what I'm saying, and this is a seed planted, and you might come back to this message here or with someone else later, and it might sort of settle in, click in more for you, but it's an important one. And if you embrace it, you can create magic. You can really, really create magic and take the pressure off you. At the same time, we still got to take action. We've still got to make our choices, but we've got the backing that if you desire something or you have an idea and it comes to you really strong, it's because it's absolutely here for you. And it's always a decision. You don't have to step into it, but if you want to, you have the backing of the entire universe because you wouldn't have had that desire. You would never have had that desire. It's that phrase like, if the vision wasn't meant for you, you would never have received it. So, what's your vision? Tune in, ask yourself, what is the vision that's calling you or that you receive from time to time? And maybe you just kind of try and ignore it and put it over there. But what keeps coming back to you? What typically gets your attention? What draws you? Certain messages, certain videos, certain movies, certain themes or books. What draws you? What pulls your attention? Because there are clues. There are so many clues in there. So it's interesting. We are multi-dimensional. So I love that message. I just wanted to share something current because that came up today. And also to prove to myself, my mind was trying to tell me before I click live, you have nothing to share, you have nothing to say. If I'd have listened to that voice, just on a regular live stream, most likely I wouldn't have pressed live. And that's the truth. I wouldn't have pressed live. The reason I pressed live today and recorded this is because I made the commitment, right? 365 days, which is why it's expanding me. So I would have just kind of sat on this message and not shared it. So I'm very glad that I did. I hope that you are glad to receive it. And I hope that it's helped shift you in some way or give you whatever reminder you need in this moment. Whenever you're watching this, you can always come back and remind yourself. So that is it for now. It's evening here, so I'm going to go and chill out and relax. So have a lovely rest of your evening or day whenever you're tuning into this message. If you're on the replay, I'd love to know that you're watching. So just pop a little comment, say hello. It's lovely to know that you're here. I really love that. I really appreciate every one of you who tunes in live and on the replay because I want to connect and have these conversations. So yes, that's it. So, and I'll love you and leave you, and I'll see you here tomorrow. Thank you, Sean. Thank you for joining me again, and thank you, Jan, as well. All right, lots of love, and I will talk to you tomorrow.